everyone, and welcome back to a special episode of Conversations with Beloved and Kindred. I am one of your co-hosts, Dr. Grace D. Gipson, Assistant Professor of African American Studies at Virginia Commonwealth University. My co-host.
And I'm Dr. Kanika Robinson, Assistant Professor of Anthropology at Furman University.
So it's not often that we get to be in the same room and do a recording. Like, these are rare. So we couldn't pass up this opportunity to do that. And so what better way than to do that with the showing or the us talking about the new movie Nope, which we're still like grappling with this movie. Probably we'll have to see it again. We'll have to, go through all of that. But when I say you definitely got to go check it out. It's definitely worth it.
I think you should definitely see it. Absolutely. That's not a question.
For sure. And we're going to kind of start out like we normally do with kind of like initial thoughts, reactions, with the film. So What was your initial thoughts and reactions about Nope?
Okay, I went in thinking about that it would be like a Get Out in that way, like really racial horror, psychological thriller in regards to race and racism, a more direct, way of thinking of racism, kind of like, again, like Get Out. And so I went in with this, this is what Jordan Peele is known for. I mean, come on, like this is his thing. And when I saw, I was like, okay. It's still a thing about, conversational race definitely comes in, but it was not in the typical way, well, in the way I thought he would present it. And of course, there were other things we'll talk about, but it was interesting. It was interesting.
Okay. Let's see. For me, when initial thoughts would definitely be, this made me really think, like the whole time throughout the movie, I was literally sitting like this. Like that blink stare that you give. I was doing that a lot because I was like really, I think probably trying to process everything.
Yeah.
Probably like trying to, what happened there? And I'm like literally tapping Dr. Robinson like, like throughout the whole movie.
And I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, there were moments where you're just like, what did that just happen? Yeah. So
and even like some of the scary moments that was like randomly show up.
Yeah.
It was good. It was interesting.
So this is like, this past season, our focus was on Blackness and horror. Yes. So this really came at a very good time. We'll definitely have to say, and I don't know if this will be the same for everybody, but when we went to see it, every movie trailer leading up to Nope was some variation of a scary movie, a horror, a thriller, something. And I don't know if that was intentional or if Jordan Peele spoke to the people and was like, look, when y'all set up the trailers for this movie, make sure y'all play nothing but horror or nothing but scary movies. Because every single one was, and I was like, this is, at first, the first couple you're like, okay, whatever.
Right.
But then when they were all
good though. Like, I'm excited.
Some of them I'm excited.
It was one movie, and I'm going to go ahead and put out there, named Smile. It's coming out at some point. I loved it because, the theater was kind of full, right? It was, kind of full. And it was one part where everyone screamed, and I was like, this is amazing. So I'm going to see it.
Yeah.
Smile, you guys.
She'll be alone on that one. She'll tell me about it.
Have a good time.
I'll take her word for it. Yeah.
Can't wait to see that in November.
But
is it November?
I think it was November, October.
Either way, I'm going to be there.
Yeah.
I got you guys. No worries.
So definitely a movie you definitely need to put on your radar to see. Jordan Peele, he's got a talent, and he's definitely doing the work and using horror very strategically, very creatively. So I mean, I'm going to give him all his props for that.
Yes.
I feel like he finds new ways to talk about stuff in a way that is maybe more palatable, digestible.
I like the challenge.
Absolutely.
I love the challenge. Because sometimes, we just need to think a bit more. And I love how his movies are criticisms of society in different ways. And so I'm glad we have a film. I mean, we have other filmmakers like Jordan Peele, but I'm happy that he's willing to push the boundaries and have us question and think deeper. Because I think it's important that we do so, that we question what we normally take for granted.
Indeed. So with this, now normally we kind of have a nice little setup, but because we like literally just saw this and everything is definitely very fresh, on the mind, on the dome, as they say.
One time now, keep this in mind too.
We'll definitely have to see again, but this is all fresh coming off.
Yes.
So there's going to be excitement here. There's going to be like still processing what happened here.
Yeah.
So a lot of this, we're going to kind of throw out some stuff to y'all, definitely in the comments, give us what you all think if you've seen it. We're trying to avoid the spoilers, it'll be as, we're going to try our best. Let me say that for me. I'm going to try my best.
She won't, I might. So let's go with it.
I'm trying my best.
I'm sorry. Nothing I can do about things.
So, but one of the first things definitely I want to kind of start us off with is this idea of surveillance and really this critique of surveillance that we see with the film. So, kind of, give us what you're seeing in this idea of surveillance. What kind of stood out to you in Nope, and what it is trying to talk about as it relates to surveillance.
So, one thing about it, again, I'm going to give spoilers. She probably won't, but she'll just reference what I give away. So there was this thing, like this alien type thing, right, in the sky, and it was always there, but it was something to be feared. And so it was this thing of, okay, is it surveilling us? And at one point, one of the characters called it the viewers. So it was always there, right? And it was a cloud that would not move. So it was something that was always there, ever present, something that was always watching. But also on the other end, you have everyone else watching it, intentionally taking out their phones and cameras, all these things to watch it. And so it really speaks of how, as a culture, we're consumed with always watching and seeing what's going on.
Right.
We're consumed with you talked about it yesterday about fighting and how, we always filming fighting. We're always wanting to see what happens.
Right.
And we're always wanting to be the audience to watch it online or the recorder. So we are in this surveillance culture where everyone sees everything. And in this movie, again, you see it in both ways. The viewers wanting, or this big alien thing wanting to see what was going on, as well as, the people want to take a picture or record it.
Right.
So that's surface level.
And then there's even kind of like a flip side where one of the main characters, OJ, who was played by Daniel Kaluuya, kind of like flips the role of who's being the surveiller here.
Right.
And so I'm not going to give too much of the scene here, but just know that he is in control here of the camera versus the camera being in control of him and the situation that's taking place. And so whereas normally, historically Black bodies continuously, because we're not going to say that this doesn't end, but are continuously surveilled. So in this moment where he kind of is able to reverse that role,
right,
definitely is a standout moment. Also, this idea of having to see everything, having to be, watching everything. And many times I was like sitting here thinking like, God, I don't want to be watched. I don't want to be looked at. And, and am I looking at stuff too much? Am I watching things too much? So we become very hyper aware after watching this movie.
It is one of those things, how we always critique social media and everything. It's like everybody want all the information online. Everybody want to record everything. Everyone wants to do so much. So it speaks to this idea that we don't like surveillance, but we like to surveil.
Right.
We want to look. We want to be the ones, viewing and recording, but we don't like it on ourselves. Yet, so you have this, it's multiple things. So we always criticize social media as always being too much or sharing too much. But yet, we talk about this dangerous dichotomy though, where it's like, we think of police brutality, how the same thing we critique became a source of power.
Right.
And we even see in the film where, at first it was like, y'all, this alien thing is trying to kill y'all. Quit trying to record it and survive. Just like we always say, stop recording them fighting, start breaking them up.
Or call the police.
Call the police, do all that stuff. Stop watching. So, at first you're saying all these things, right? But then you see how the same type of vehicle to, watching things like that was used to help control, like you just said, with Kaluuya's character, OJ. Is it OJ?
OJ, yep.
OJ. How he used it in his own way, almost to fight against it.
Right.
He was like, I'm not going to look at you. You're looking at me.
Yep.
And then he turned the camera back. At the moment, it was one scene specifically, I'm telling you a story, where there were like aliens, but it was really people in costume.
Little kids.
They were like playing this horror game, whatever. And so he was trying to run away, but then he had a camera. And when he turned that camera on them, you know, one, he was just filming the whole thing. Granted, they still try to play games and he punched one of them. It was fantastic. But it was his like activism or a way for him to fight back against this thing trying to scare him.
Right.
And even when we look at him and his sister Emerald, how they were like, we're going to capture this.
Yes.
Because people don't believe us when we say this is happening. People don't trust that this is happening. Even when you go back at the beginning, when it opens with this black cowboy, no one knew the story. And who's documenting Black history? Right. Who's documenting not only our trials or our struggles, but also our triumphs. So even though we criticize it, again, it's this dangerous type conversation where it's like, but we need that too. It's almost another voice and a way of documenting our history, also as a way of our understanding what we're going through and as a form of activism for us. And we see this in this film.
Yes. Yeah. So you mentioned Emerald, who is played by Keke Palmer.
She's great, you guys. Well, both all the actors.
Everybody really nailed it. I really actually like this role for her. Like, it's definitely very different.
Yeah.
It's definitely not one that we've seen her play. So gotta appreciate the diversity that each of these characters, these actors are bringing, you know, to who they are and their repertoire. And so the relationship between Emerald and OJ, you know, this brother sister who they don't seem like they're like the closest of siblings, but it's kind of like, you know, a lot is going on. They live way out in West Bumble somewhere.
It really is like in the boondocks of life.
Way in the boonies. Like, put it like this, I wouldn't be living out there, not by myself in that open land.
It was like land
with random UFOs.
Yeah, it's like where's the city? Around. You know?
Yeah. And so you brought up an interesting point of, you know, documenting things because particularly for Black folks, like when we say things, people don't often always believe us until we have some kind of like hardcore truth.
Right.
So they were constantly having to document everything to show, to prove.
Right.
To be credible. We're listening to this podcast outside of this.
Yeah,
we're talking about credible witnesses, and credible takes on a whole new meaning.
Yes.
After listening to this thing.
Yes. And you know what? You just brought something. I just thought about it. I appreciate her character because, okay, one thing that OJ and Emerald have, again, it's like this mess, like they're close but not close.
Right.
And then, you know, you're like, what's going on? And then she has a story where she talks about how her father wanted her to train this horse named Jean Jacket.
And the father is Keith David.
He's amazing. And so one day she looked outside and OJ was training Jean Jacket with him. And then at that point, she was like, and no one cared. But he looked back and said, I saw you.
Right.
So it speaks of like, I see you as a Black woman. I always saw you.
Yeah.
And then even at the end, when they were doing this thing, like, I see you, like, we're here.
Yeah.
And I was like, and maybe it was a little thing, but it was important that I see you. When others don't, even when our father didn't, I saw you.
Yeah.
And so it speaks to the visibility of Black women. So I just want to throw it out there because that was key.
Very good point of putting that out because, you know, our focus with this particular podcast is like, you know, focusing from this Black feminist imagination, and particularly when we can focus on Black women represented, you know, we definitely want to. And Keke Palmer is definitely putting Black women on the map in this way. There's no, and she doesn't neatly fit into a box either.
No.
I really appreciated that. She's not this just like regular, very cisgendered. If anything, I'd say there's some queerness about her.
Yeah.
Because she kind of talks about some things where you're like, oh, okay, but you're just not, you know,
I like that. Yeah, it was great.
So there was a spice, there's a variety. Like we're not just giving you what you think or what is whatever the traditional, you know, is. So yeah, you know, you also mentioned about documenting Black culture, Black history.
Because even in that one scene where, you know, like we just talked about seeing each other,
right?
That's part of documentation.
Yes.
Because it's like, you know, we may see each other, right? And we document it by, hey, how you doing, whatever. But also there's something in formally documenting.
Yeah.
Where it's recorded. Again, the fact that their great-great-grandfather was the first to be recorded on a horse. No one knew of them.
In a motion picture,
In a motion picture. No one knew of him. But she's able to, she as a woman That's another one. Women matriarchs carrying the story, oral history. Come on now, let's talk about it. So, you know how she carried on that story. He knew it, but he couldn't really say it, even when she wasn't. He could not move when she wasn't there.
Yes,
he couldn't really tell the story, so she was holding the story. Right. And again, yes, you know, we'll talk about the whole camera angle a bit later, or more so. We already talked about it. But even her quest to document what was going on, right? She was like, we need to document this. Mm-hmm. Yes, it was about like, you know, we can make money off of this, and it goes back to surveillance culture and the need to feed Hollywood. But it was this thing of, you see how we had this recorded. Mm-hmm. We need to also record what's happening to us. Right. And it was her who drove that conversation, right? Not her brother. And she had to kind of like really convince her brother, be like, look, let's do this. Like, we need to do this. Like, there's no point in sitting here. Because their father passes away or dies, and so killed. You know, he's killed. Won't say how, but it's in a very sudden, abrupt moment. Right. And so, you know, imagine when someone very close to patriarch, who's only one left of parents, is gone. What do you do? Mm-hmm. Life still has to move forward. So she, although she kind of comes in after as like an afterthought, she comes in like, okay, but we still got to keep this thing moving. Still got to keep it moving. Like so. She, in a way, picks up the pieces, like you said, carries on the story, ensures that people are going to know, motivates, pushes, you know, becomes a voice for the voiceless. And, you know, so like, you're going to know our history. You want to know this. And even again, he tried to say it, but he didn't. Right. And she could say it with such like ease. It was almost like it was in her mind ingrained. So when she came up there, she was just spit it, boom. And whereas he kind of had to like think about it. Right. Yeah, because he was right. You know, she was like, and this, you know, all of that. Right. And she was happy about it too. That was the other thing. So whereas he was not as enthused about it. Not to say that he doesn't think the culture is that great, but I think just his mind was very tunnel vision on like work. Right. Very much so. So, and in that, so we've kind of touched upon, you know, the surveillance, we've touched upon the documenting, which I even think with this movie as a whole, you know, Jordan Peele is really kind of like tapping into things that maybe we probably would not have talked about, or maybe have talked about, but not as much. So it's like, let's talk about this more. Yeah. Particularly as it relates to Black handlers. Yeah. You know, because I don't think people probably even think about the animals in film and who has to help these animals be a part of the film. Right. You know. Yeah, I think that is very key, very much so. Especially now, I don't know if it's a new thing or it's just a thing that we're just not paying attention to. Like animals, you know, seeking justice or something, or going against, you know, the whole thing with the elephant and the woman, and you know, the monkey and the woman. It's so many different things, like animals, you know, rebelling, I guess. Right. And I mean, but this has always been a thing. I mean, it's been a thing. Yeah. These are not humans. Right. They're not humans. And so like you see this here where the whole thing with Gordy's home. Right. And how the chimp, you know, rebels and like kills everyone except Gordy or Jude. Yeah, from Jupiter. His full name is Jupiter. Stephen Young played character. He's good. He's really good. I believe him. And, you know, you see how this chimp rebels. Right. And that goes back to the one incident in 2009 where I can't remember all the details right now because I literally just found this out, about a woman, it was a couple who they took a baby from his mother, a chimp from mother, and then the chimp rebelled against one of their friends and like messed up their whole face. And they had mauled their face. They had to get a face transplant. And she would walk around with this veil, a hat with a veil. And she talked about it actually in 2009 with Oprah. It was in 2008 when it happened, I believe. Well, 2009, but later. And she talks about it with Oprah, how she had to walk around with this thing on. And we see an image of that in the movie. Yep. Because I don't recall that incident happening. I never remember that. But, you know, you see this conversation even with how we managing or how we handling animals. Yes. And who we're putting in control of this, and are we respecting animals? But also going back to the Black cowboy and how growing up, when I think of the West, I never thought about Black people as cowboys. Now, granted, when we've kind of talked about this before, I mean, I remember watching Bonanza and Gunsmoke with my grandmother, but
that wasn't meaning that there were Black cowboys in there. I mean, I like Westerns. I feel like the Black people that were in Bonanza and Gunsmoke, we the outlaws, criminals.
Oh, okay.
You know, they were not of substance, but it was something about Westerns for me that I did enjoy. Maybe it was the community with my grandmother.
That's what it was, exactly.
But yeah, I mean, historically, until The Harder They Fall comes out,
yeah,
people didn't know about Black cowboys.
I mean, I never thought of it as a thing. It was like we were never over there.
Unless you lived in Atlanta and you went to the Wilson Pickett festival that they had in College Park. Did you know about that?
No.
Yeah, so we'll talk about that offline. But there was like a Wilson Pickett, I believe it's either a bull riding festival or it was some kind of cowboy festival that happens in College Park in East Point, College Park, East Point, in Georgia. And you know, if you all know Wilson Pickett, very well known Black cowboy, one of the few that does get talked about. And so, and I believe even there's a festival mentioned in High on the Hog. In one of the episodes where they talk about Black cowboys. But once again, this is not something that is regularly, and this is 2019, 2020, 2021 that we're talking about it. Right. It's not like we've been talking about this for years or something.
So, exactly. And then, you know, come to find out that, you know, according to Smithsonian Magazine, historians said that 1 in 4 cowboys were Black.
Wow.
And I would not have never known, but you know, we see these movies and it's like, oh my gosh, you know, were there really Black cowboys and cowgirls, or you know, this is just fictional. But then, you know, when you think of, okay, prior to the Civil War, well, even during the Civil War, there were a lot of cattle that needs to be herded and things like that, a lot of land in Texas, for example. And so during the Civil War, many of the ranchers, the white ranchers and slave masters, left to fight for the Confederacy. So it was the enslaved population who had to handle the land and the herd and herd the cattle and things of that nature. So then they became skilled in, you know, cattle herding and becoming cowboys. And so that skilled labor, even following the Civil War, made them very popular. And so even up north, but you know, you start seeing this increase in cowboys and their work as, you know, cattle herders. And I didn't know any of that. No one, because again, this image, you know, I guess is why it's important in the movie, how at the beginning, how she talked about Black people in, you know, as cowboys, how we did not see that, but we were all involved in it. But then you had Nat Love, who was a huge cowboy, you know, at the turn of the century. And it's like, I'm so happy that we're talking about this now in film to bring us to a point where, okay, hey, you all, we were present in every aspect of this world, and we have to always go back, and it's not always documented. And that's the thing, just like going back to this theme of this movie, we need to document these things. We need to learn about this part of history. We were there, and we should not be clips in it, even though I did not watch Bonanza. And what was the other one?
Gunsmoke.
I did not.
It's not for everybody. Like I said, it was a special time between my grandma and I. It was a bonding time. There's no, you get to keep your Black card.
Thank you. I know, like, because I know, like, no, I didn't see it. I apologize. I know some people around me watch it, and but no, you're right. Thank you. Enjoy your time.
But you talked about something that made me think about an article that we both read about what Nope largely does and how it, you know, this Times article speaks to Nope as being a parable about the power of cinema. And yeah, I mean, when it's all said and done, the people who direct it, the people who produce it, the people who star in it, you know, that's where the control and the power is. About film. It's not necessarily just the actor. We always talk about who's playing the lead role. That is important.
Yeah, it's important. Yeah, but
who's also directing it, who's also writing the script, who's also producing it. And these are all things that are very necessary and very much needed in order for the film and movie to take place.
Right.
So, and Jordan Peele is really becoming a huge example of that. Like, you'll notice in the credits, it says written, produced, directed, and I think something else by Jordan Peele. Like, he had his hands in all of that.
Right. As he should.
Nobody else on the outside was doing that. And so it's all about who's telling our stories.
Right.
And who gets to also benefit, you know, from these stories. Because so often we weren't behind the camera.
Right.
We may have been in front of it, but we were sometimes mocked. We were, we were in many ways like Gordy, who is this monkey. We were not seen as really, we're here for your entertainment.
Right.
Not necessarily like for me because I love this or this is what I do. So, yeah.
We see that often. Like even in this film, when we look at it, it's like, who's talking about the cowboy? The commercial at the beginning,
right?
And it was about the cowboy, but they were like, "No, we don't need you in it."
And it's like, but you gonna get me though,
right? Exactly. And then how Jupiter becomes famous by stealing horses.
Yes,
taking the horses, like not stealing, but taking them in different ways, and it's not even his horse. It's about his fame. It wasn't about the people that he was taken from.
Right.
It wasn't about the what was it? The Hardaway?
The Hard. Oh, dang! What is it? Starts with an H.
Starts with the H. It wasn't about that. Start with H ranch. No one even looked at that ranch. It wasn't about them. He did not give credit to them. He just took from them for his own personal gain.
Yes.
It wasn't about, okay, we're gonna give honor to the these Black people. Again, the first Black man cowboy captured on a motion picture. This is their descendants. These are his descendants. Haywood Ranch, right? So that's the descendant, but yet they were not given credit.
Right.
But he was just trying to get his fame back that he really lost when he was young by taking from someone else. So it goes back to who has control over what. So it's their product, but it's his money.
And exploitation.
Because exploitation was huge in here. And how even they exploit the chimp. Yep. How they exploited the horses. Except what was it called again? Hardaway?
Haywood.
I gotta figure this out. I don't know my Hardaway. The Haywoods, right? Like, you're exploiting their animals, and their animals were just trying to survive and just enjoy their whole life.
Minding their business.
Mind their whole business. But Jupiter said, look, we're gonna take these horses, even though we know this alien thing is going to consume and possibly kill them, it will bring me fame.
And it's all about what do I get?
What do I get? What do I get from exploiting them? Knowing, because he knew about this alien thing. He knew about it, and he brought an audience. He said, all you guys look at this, it's going to change your life.
In many ways, setting the people up for their own death.
Sure did. But you know what? It goes back to, surveillance culture and the need for the gaze. Yep. The need to always see.
Yep.
And one thing about this alien thing, which is a thing.
It's an odd thing.
An odd thing. I don't know if at one time a spaceship, then it was like a thing.
Yeah.
But if you don't look at it, you will survive. But everyone wants to always see. You want to always look. It's like what is the Bible? Come on now, you know what it is. Don't look back.
Oh, the Sankofa bird?
That's cute too. But it's the one in the Bible where if you look back, you turn to a pillar of salt.
Oh, yeah. So you're trying to get us on this.
Okay, I give you some time. You can look. Yeah. So yes. So if they would not have looked, now one thing before they started this thing that Jupiter had for the audience, like this big thing where he was going to parade out the horses from the Haywood farm ranch. He said, or the lady said, do not, use your phone. Like put your phone up. Don't take pictures. Don't do any of that. Put it away. They were like, okay, we will for now. But then the thing came and everyone stood up and just like looked and gazed at it. It was like, oh, it's something to be marveled at, or to, just stare at, and to, oh my God, this is interesting. And even though they know it may be dangerous, they could not look away.
It was this idea of like, they would risk themselves.
Yes.
To just look at this foreign object.
And document it. They had their phones out like, oh my God, we're going to look.
After they've been told.
Yes.
Not to.
Put your phones away. And it doesn't matter, they all died, including the people who told them, because they all looked up. It was like, wow, okay. But they were like, oh, I need to see. This need to always look and see what's going on. Yep. And I get it, sometimes we do that for our protection, but sometimes we're just simply nosy. Yeah. And again, but we have this consumption culture where it's like we always need to consume everything around us. We need to be aware of everything that's going on. And so because of that, they all were sucked up into this little UFO thing. and the horse survived.
Yep.
He didn't even need the horse, but Jupiter was gone because Jupiter looked up and was just shocked. I guess, if they were the viewers, as he called the little thing, of course he wants to look at the viewers.
Right.
He wants to watch them surveil them. He wants to watch the thing surveil him and them. Yeah.
Think of it like this. When you're on the highway, if you're in where I am, Richmond on 95, 64, if you're in Greenville, what's your highway in Greenville?
I mean, we can just say Poinsett.
Okay, all right. And if you in Atlanta, where our old stomping grounds, 290, 285, 75, 85, and you see a kind of like this not pile up, but pausing of cars. And you're wondering, what's going on?
We're going to look over.
And if you look on the other side and you see why, you're like, oh, I understand why we're paused here, because everybody's trying to look at what's happening over there. Yep. And that's the problem, is that we are so concerned about what's happening over there that we lose focus about what's in front of us or pay attention to our own selves, that we're willing to risk our lives to see what's happening with somebody else's life.
Right. Exactly. That's a good one, though.
I mean, I every time I'm driving and I see people who are just like, driving and look, and I'm like, are we really paying attention here? Like, are we really like not focusing on the road?
Right. That's the thing. And then just like we talked about earlier with this dichotomy of watching, where now, even with police brutality, if something happened, we want to go, we have to, or we feel the need, we don't have to pull over or at least record ourselves, or recording them, because we're like, we don't know what could happen. It could be something that could be used later, or it could help save this person, or if not, it could be used, like I said, later. So you have, again, it's like, there's a delicate balance. Sometimes it's just simply, being nosy and wanting to just see, right? But then sometimes it's for protection. So it's a delicate dance, right? Really on the highway, you don't have to pull over. No, just keep going, please. No. Thank you. Because if you're on 85, 75, for example, just go. Keep it moving. We don't. I mean,
that's why people be late, because y'all folks that be watching.
It really does cause a problem.
Yes. Some other things that kind of stood out for us. I liked how this idea that Emerald talked about the perfect shot. She called it the Oprah shot. And I said, that makes sense when we talk about that story that you brought up about the woman who went on Oprah. All these little details, I'm telling you, Jordan be really getting this stuff. When you finally break down one of his movies, you learn something, a whole history lesson through that. So you got the Oprah shot, like what they call a money shot. Yeah. Which toward the end, Emerald is obsessed with making sure that she gets this last shot. And a part of it is, I think, for survival of her family. Yeah. Because that's needed in order for them to keep going. Yeah. Because without that, as we said earlier, nobody's going to believe them. Nobody's going to be whatever. Y'all live way out in the West. Who cares? Yeah. They're not. You have, we talked about this also after the movie about Hollywood as a very capitalistic endeavor. So many people don't make it. Few do, in Hollywood, always consuming. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Where lack of respect, right, that people get. And so even think about all this being involved in capitalism. It's not about respect, it's about money. And so you see, it's not about respect, it's not about safety, it's about money. Like, you risk for money. Yeah. And so you see, like, getting this money shot at the end, this director, he goes all the way up to the little thing. And it's like, dude, you are going to die. Yes. You're staring dead at it and you're recording it. Know that you and your camera are going to be gone. There would not be anything left. And he's still, he's like, but this is the shot. The impossible shot. It was impossible. He died. And then, TMZ showed up. Well, it was before then. TMZ showed up on a little motorcycle, like, I'm bringing my camera because I can't wait to see this thing. Because one thing about when you discover something, everybody want to see it. They want to see it. They want to capitalize on it. Yep. They want to be the, expose. They want to see this thing. And so, he shows up and then he's sitting here knocked off his motorcycle, almost dead. And then he was like, but my camera. But please make sure you get the picture. Camera? Did you get the picture of that? As he's dying. So it's like you would sacrifice yourself, your morals for the shot. Yeah. And your concern is not documenting to get out just like that. It's not documenting for safety reason or to tell the story. You're documenting for the expose.
the money shot, the impossible shot, the money that comes from this money shot.
Mm-hmm.
You don't care about your life, but you care about this shot.
Yes.
And so you don't care about the fact that the horses are gone and people are dying. You care that your story will be on the front page.
Mm-hmm.
Your documentary will be the best.
Right.
But you don't care about what your documentary is really on.
Mm-mm.
You're not caring about the people who are suffering that you're talking about because you're too consumed with documenting it.
Yes.
But your motive, but go ahead.
So I want to rewind just a little bit. So before we get to everybody documenting this and obsessed with it, as we talked about when Emerald first says that we need to record this, and she's in the Home Depot or the Fry's, I think it's a Fry's, getting all this equipment. And before that, they get back and they call this director. And on the conversation, she's talking to him, and he's got a very laissez-faire, type of attitude.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, what type of film are you talking about? And she goes, reality. Which, when you think about, like, that's always the first thing that he's going to do now. Reality TV. Like, that's the thing. It's quick, easy.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily always the greatest. And he kind of just pauses. And OJ tells her, no, tell him documentary.
Yeah.
And even in that, it speaks to the highbrow and lowbrow culture of, movies, even though that was at one point considered lowbrow.
Yeah.
But reality TV, which now if you kind of look at it like a movie film is probably more still the highbrow, whereas reality TV is definitely lowbrow.
Yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely.
So the fact that he had to say documentary just to get the man's attention.
Yeah, because also another aspect of that too is that you want to document your real life.
Right.
You want to document life as it's going on. You don't want to document the fear. You don't want to, in real life, in real time. Documentary is easier because you're able to manipulate according to a storyline.
Yes.
So if you can do reality TV too. We'll make the argument. I'll take his win. But when you think about, hey, reality series, can you could just film us trying to live and trying to survive.
Right.
Because I think other people need to know about this. I don't want reality. That's not really my thing. But how about documentary? Oh yeah, because we can make it fantastical almost if necessary to appeal. We can make it fun. And it's like, okay, well, great. So yeah, and I do agree where you think of this high and low brow, where like reality series and it's a thing.
It is. And reality attracts people. But documentary, there's a lasting quality.
It's a lasting documentary. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
There's a seriousness that people give to you. When you say, oh, I'm doing a documentary film. Oh, got it.
Like that's real. That's real.
Yeah.
I'm doing a reality series. Girl, congrats, I guess. Yeah, it's not really. It's not.
So through all this, definitely could say the spectacle is a huge, part here. And in the movie, once again, Jordan Peele, he's really got this down. Yes, I feel like he's probably got a vault of stuff.
Yeah.
Because if you think about the movies that have been coming out since with Get Out comes out 2017, Us comes out 2019. And probably because of the pandemic, Nope comes out, kind of goes off that every 2 year thing. Because if it wasn't for the pandemic, probably would have came out 2 years later.
Right.
So I can only imagine what's going to come after Nope, because he's got them coming out like that.
Yeah, yeah.
So as always, he opens up the film in some very deep way. And in this one is no exception. He starts a little biblical. He pulls out a book of the Bible that not many of us probably even read or even remember is even in the Bible.
Yeah.
Nahum chapter 3, verse 6, which reads in the King James Version, and I will cast abominable filth upon thee and make thee vile, and will set thee as a gazing stock. Excuse me. Now there's a lot.
Yeah.
And by no means am I a religious scholar, biblical scholar, by no means. We're just kind of interpreting this in a very basic, minimal way here. But, what we see with that UFO or whatever foreign object, definitely casting abominable filth. Right. And making thee vile, and will set thee as gazing stock. It does all of that.
Right. So this thing in itself is like, but it's funny because let's say this is this gazing stock, this the spectacle. Well, we are the spectacle.
Right.
Say we are the spectacle.
Yes.
We are the gazing stock. And then, but the thing is, the fifth that he's throwing back at us, we gave to him.
Yes.
We gave him all that, like the same fifth that, you know, we may criticize Hollywood for this mess or whatever, or this UFO, which, you know, represents almost Hollywood and the viewers at the same time. I don't know, but it giving it back.
Yeah. We
gave it this. We gave it that random horse that Emerald got from Jupiter's place.
Yes.
Like he threw it back.
He did, because I don't want that.
I don't want that. Like, so everything that it throws back is what we gave. So even though, you know, we criticize the spectacle, it's like, but this is what you gave me.
Right.
In essence, you created me.
It did. It did. Yeah.
You created me. And so because you did that, I'm giving you what you gave me. So you don't no longer need me if you can keep it for yourself. And so then, you know, that thing looking at us as a spectacle, but we in turn did the same thing to it.
Right.
Like, again, feeding it filth, giving it our filth, giving it our stuff, right? And we're just like as the spectacle is throwing it at us, we're throwing it back. Like we keep throwing it up. Like it's a circle. It's a
right.
A maladaptive, messed up circle, but it's a thing. It's a thing, right? So we look at it like, oh, you're out gazing stock. You're something to be gazed at, and you're the problem. Right. It's like, but that means we're the problem.
Right.
So it's like it comes back and forth. So it really does bring the question, well, who's the spectacle?
Right.
Did we create ourselves as a spectacle? Because the only time that, you know, things change is when OJ decides, I'm no longer going to be the spectacle. I'm going to take control of my narrative.
Yep.
I'm going to take control of my story. I won't look at it because I don't need to.
Right.
And then when I do look at it, it can't control me anymore. Because he looks at it at the end, and I thought he was gone. When Emerald ran with on the bike, I thought he was gone. We were good. I said, well, that was nice. He sacrificed himself for his sister. But he survived because he said, this is mine. Yeah. I gave it what it gave me, and I gave it back nothing else, so it died. And then Emerald said, I'm going to help you with that death. Right. I'm going to give it what it expects to get.
Yes.
This little fake thing.
A white cowboy.
A white cowboy. This fake thing that would kill it. It's like, I'm going to give you something unreal.
Right.
But yeah, and still she took a picture of it. Like, I'm going to document your demise. And the fact that we're still here. And then even with that scene of her brother on the horse, we're still here.
Yep. It was a hero pose.
It was a hero pose.
A hero moment. Like when the dust settles.
Yeah.
Literally. Yeah. The dust was settling.
It was settling. It took a minute though.
And I'm glad he held on. And she kind of was like, that whole, and it was like, I do see you. I do see you. And she's literally like
it was hard because it was a lot of dust, guys. It's the West. Like it was a lot of dust.
Oh man.
Yeah.
But even in that moment, because that's how it closes out, where this heroic moment of like, he's still standing.
And even in the midst of all this death, you had the reporters on the other side. They were waiting to record what happened.
Yep.
But then she was like, even out, you know, at the end when she did not go back to the pictures, she just looked toward, because she was taking pictures of the thing as it was dying with the white plastic cowboy, this unreal thing.
Yes.
And the unreal thing killed it, killed this spectacle, this Hollywood, as you will, or even the viewers, because it wasn't real. Right. So now you disrupted the matrix when you threw it up there. And then she looks toward her brother like, this is history. We did this.
We did this. It's, you know, like I said, in the end, and I'll be honest, when watching it at the end, we literally kind of hung out in the theater like,
that's so sad.
Like it was just really like, wow, what happened?
Yeah. Because I'll tell you one thing, our initial thoughts were not these thoughts.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, is the spectacle this? No, is that thing like represents?
What happened there?
What was that? What was that?
So if there's a lesson to be learned.
Yeah.
Don't overthink it.
Don't overthink it.
It's a movie that in many ways it is literal, but I think for us at least, as scholars who are trained to think and research and dig, we overthink sometimes. When the picture is right there in front of you. Right. Literally.
And I think that's the problem. That goes back to even how we treat it. Like, you know, Hollywood, where we expect so much.
Right.
We're overthinking. It's probably when it's like, it should not be this much.
It shouldn't.
And then, you know, at one point we think about how Get Out, how Get Out has been overconsumed.
Yeah.
And this is to speak against overconsumption.
Right.
But Get Out, great movie. I love it. Oh. But now you have people who love it so much, it's losing its power.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's losing the very thing it was meant to be. It is meant to be aggressive in and of itself,
right,
to show what Black people are experiencing. It was meant to be a horror flick, a horror movie, and to show the real horrors of what does it mean to walk around Black.
Right.
But as people start to love it and want to see it all the time and always reference it, even in anything, it's overconsumed. And so this speaks of, well, what happens when you consume too much?
Right.
What happens when you over ask or over demand? And even when we think about Jordan Peele himself, we expected this from him. We wanted another Get Out. Right. We wanted another Us. We wanted that in that specific way. And we were controlling him.
Right.
In what he was giving us.
And he was like, no, I'm gonna give you what I'm gonna give you.
I'm gonna give you what I'm gonna give you. And so we had to get our lives together and say, this ain't our film.
Nope.
this is we should not expect, I expect greatness and he delivered. But I should not, change his story for what I want, or make his story fit into what I thought his story should be. And so it was a lot that I had to think about with that.
Which in many ways is how Black people, Black women in particular, should not have to change who they are, change their story to fit into someone else's box. To fit into someone else's narrative. Because why do I want to live someone else's narrative when I got my own? That I want to show, tell, everything like that. So there's just, and even there's some humor.
Yeah, there's humor.
So we got to talk about the title real quick. Like in every horror film, and we talked about this when we talked about the documentary, the horror noir. Those moments where when you see things, Black folks typically, when you see something odd, strange, nope, we ain't staying around. And so I think there was also that element that is introduced or not introduced or reintroduced in this film.
Yeah, because you remember how in Get Out, the biggest scene that everyone loved, not the biggest scene, it was one of the scenes when that lady, when they went to, no. No. And in this one, we see that Emerald does it.
Like, nope. And she also goes, no.
Huh. The power of the no. That's the thing in itself. That's the sermon. We'll talk about that. That is. But the whole note. Like for a minute though, afterwards, I did have to ask you, like, where did the note come from?
Right. I mean, and they say it periodically.
Yeah.
So because it's like clearly there's a reason why this is titled Nope.
Yeah.
I definitely was curious when I first saw the trailer. Like, no. Okay, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Where's he going with this? But we get there. He takes you there. So patience, grasshopper, patience. Yeah. But yeah, so in the end, what we asked, what was your initial thoughts and when you, after seeing it, after talking about it, what has changed? I know this is early.
It's still early.
But what I guess maybe do you feel differently, maybe made you think a little bit more about, with the film?
I think even after this discussion, thinking more about it.
That's it.
I mean, I like it. I think it's good. I think it's worth seeing. I think we all should watch it. The challenge that I expected is a different challenge.
Yeah.
And I'm happy that I'm able to have these conversations because of seeing the movie.
Yes.
So I have no problem with that. I think the movie is good. I think it's worth it. I think it's a deep dive into Hollywood and even our lack of representation in Hollywood historically, particularly with Cowboys, like we just talked about. And I think because of this, I'm more interested in Black cowboy, cowgirl, cow person culture. Yeah, I do want to learn more about that.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that was his intent, but I did take that away. And it does make, it brings up that conversation of how much should we surveil and how much should we consume?
Yeah. I mean, in the end, like I said, not to overthink. I think that's still for me is going to be the main thing, even in the beginning, middle, and end. This idea of, who's watching who believes who. This idea of documentation,
right,
for sure. And what people will risk just to obtain something,
Mm-hmm.
you know, for that fame, for that money,
Yeah.
that people are really willing to risk their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And
or risk someone else's life.
Or risk someone else's life.
And that, yeah.
It's like people could care less about you. They're like, as long as I'm getting mine.
Right.
If you happen to be a casualty in this, I'm sorry. Oops. You know. So
but I think that's key, where it's like, you know, even going back to the conversation like you just said about documenting our history, it's important. And it's important that we control that narrative.
Right.
Like, who's telling the story, who's writing it, who's a part of it. And you know, because I think that's a huge part of our past here.
Yeah.
Who's telling the story?
Yep.
And, you know, just like you said, who believes who? And we can create, we have the power to create our own story and write our own narrative, which is the same thing I just said. But either way, I think that is a big takeaway too. I agree with that and the other things you said.
And something that you mentioned afterwards, the creating of the archive.
Yeah.
This movie is really talking about how the archive for Black folks, the Black community is very necessary.
It's necessary. So the thing is, so there's different archives, right? I'm not going to go into detail. But you have the official archive of our past, right? Let's say in the U.S. specifically, you have this American archive that's, you know, in different states, or the National Archive at D.C., things of that nature. You have the, what's it called? It's the Library of Congress, right? So you have these archives, but also it's important to have also like kind of like counter archives, community archives, fugitive archives.
Yep.
Like, these archives are those that we craft, that are not so official, but we have control over. Those archives are from documents and things that we've created about ourselves.
Right.
So both are important. I'm not saying one over the other, but also we can create our own archives, which we do anyway. Like in our family, we keep obituaries, we keep things from whatever.
Funeral programs,
all these different things, pictures. We have our archives in our family, but also community archives.
Right.
So like, if we didn't know, like, let's say, since Grace loved, you know, Cowboys so much and Westerns, like maybe she had a cowboy in her family. So it's about, we have to also be a, you know, agent of our own past.
Yeah.
How are we documenting these things? So I think creating an archive and archiving is key, and that's important. You know, going back to documentation, that's what he was saying. Hey, we need to document our archives ourselves, but don't be consumed with it. It's not always for capitalistic gain. It's not always for money, and it's not always for the impossible shots.
Right. Right.
Because if we're going to use cinema, even if we speak of cinema, or any type of digital media to tell our story, we have to be careful.
Right.
We have to be mindful of how we're doing this. If we are documenting what's going on day to day in Black lives, we have to be careful what we are documenting. Because if we're documenting people fighting each other, how would that come back to us?
Or how does that help us?
How does that help us? And, you know, but if we're documenting to protect us,
right?
So again, it's about motive and management.
Yes, and survival.
So, you know, I think archives are great, but how are we using these this vehicle, this digital vehicle, to capture our stories?
Yep.
We have to be careful.
It's a lot here. It's a lot here. Well, this was one of those things, like I said, a special episode that was special also that we got to be here to do it together. And it kind of, we thought we closed out our theme of Blackness and horror, but clearly we had one more for y'all.
I mean, yeah, this is like a psychological.
Yeah, I mean, you know, as we talked about, horror is so broad.
Horror is broad. You're right.
And this becomes another example of the broad stroke that horror, you know, brushes. So
you're right. You're right. I can see that, because it's scary when you're like this surveillance culture. Everyone's always seeing. It's like, why, you know, we don't want to do certain things because we're scared that someone's gonna record it.
Right.
So it restricts our freedom.
Or the fact that I don't want to be snatched up.
Nope.
And never come back. Like, I don't want that.
But I also will be hiding.
Yes.
And I don't plan on looking up at UFOs. That's not my thing.
I'm not gonna be either. So if they, you know, that whole thing about not looking up, well, you wouldn't have to worry, because I wouldn't have been looking up.
It wouldn't be a thing. You don't gotta tell me once. I would figure it out on my own. Yeah. So it's a thing. Yeah.
But like I said, definitely go see this. Definitely, it's a recommend. Jordan Peele strikes again.
Huge fan.
I will continue to support, continue to be a fan. Appreciate the commentary. So much needed, even especially in this time. this is a film that we can come back to.
Yeah, exactly.
We can have this conversation 10 years from now.
We're gonna watch it again.
Hopefully we will change some of the
Yeah.
things, but we can definitely have this conversation again.
Mhm.
It's not gonna be it's timeless. It's a timeless film. So
yeah, it was definitely great. You're right about that.
Indeed.
Mhm.
So, well, you guys, thanks again for joining
Thank
us.
you.
We hope you enjoyed. We hope you go out and go see it. Definitely give us, share with your thoughts with us and what you think about it. As always, got suggestions for us, let us know.
Please.
We're always open mind, open ears to talking and discussing about things. And until next time, stay tuned for another episode of Conversations with Beloved and Kindred.
Yeah.
Have a good one.
Enjoy.